My mean mother-in-law said I'm not part of the family just before our holiday, so my husband and I left her behind at the airport and went on our own fun adventure. A few days ago, my husband's family and I were getting ready for their annual family vacation tradition. Every year, they all come together, choose a destination, and take a break from everything to travel for a week. My husband, 30 meters, and I, 30 had recently tied the knot after dating for 3 years. I was really excited to join them for the first time, especially since the previous year when we were engaged. I had declined because his family hadn't directly invited me. This time, my mother-in-law Sandra invited me herself, which felt like a big step. Sandra hadn't been very warm towards me in the past. She never made me feel like part of the family and was often unkind. I couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't approve of me. Perhaps it was because when my husband and I started dating, he moved out of their house to live with me instead. I believe that's when her attitude towards me started to change, becoming colder. She couldn't openly blame me, so she tried to hide it, but I could tell she resented me for being the reason her son moved out to live with me. I've always been independent, living away from my parents as his college. Living with either his family or mine was never an option for me. It was something I made clear to my husband from the start. I wasn't going to move in with his parents or live nearby after marriage. I don't think my expectations were unreasonable, and I was upfront about them with my husband. When my husband and I first discussed moving in together, he was supportive, and as long as he was on board, I didn't see any reason for anyone else to object. He had been contemplating getting his own place, but his mother's desire for everyone to live together or close by had been a barrier. She had managed to keep the family close, with my husband's married sister living just down the street, visiting regularly. Sandra seemed to believe this was the only way to live, and she might view my desire for independence as unreasonable. However, my husband preferred living with me, valuing the privacy he lacked growing up. We were content with our arrangement, but I knew Sandra likely blamed me for her son's choice to live away from the family. The only reason I can think of for her disliking me is that I've always been friendly to my husband's family and tried my best to fit in. However, even that doesn't seem to be enough. Just a few days ago, Sandra made it clear that she still doesn't see me as part of the family, despite marrying her son a couple of months ago. We had been planning the family vacation for months, and I had been actively involved. Typically, my husband's parents cover all the expenses as they are well off. I assumed it would be the same this time. However, right before we were set to leave, Sandra surprised me by saying I needed to pay for myself. She invited me over to discuss the trip, and when I arrived, she explained that since they didn't consider me family yet, I would have to cover my own expenses. She asked me not to make a fuss about it to avoid spoiling the vacation vibe. She didn't stop there. Instead, she made matters worse by explaining why she didn't see me as family. She pointed out that unlike her other son-in-law, she rarely saw me and my husband because we didn't visit as often as the others. This lack of presence made her feel like I wasn't yet part of the family. Her words hurt deeply because I had made efforts to connect with this family, despite Sandra's disapproval. She had given me the impression that I was finally being accepted into the family by involving me in the vacation planning. If she had been honest from the beginning, I would have understood. But dropping this bombshell right before we were set to leave felt unnecessarily cruel. Despite feeling upset, I tried to conceal my emotions and pretend to be okay with it. I didn't want to react hastily or let my anger take over, so I told her it was okay and that I understood her perspective. I agreed to pay for myself. Although she seemed surprised by my response, I could tell it wasn't the reaction she had expected. I didn't stick around to have a conversation with her. Instead, I headed straight back home. It took all my strength to hold back tears as I walked through the door. Trying to remain composed, I explained everything to my husband when he noticed my distress and asked what had happened at his mother's house. He was furious and immediately suggested canceling the vacation. He had no desire to spend any more time with his mother after the way she had insulted me. I admitted to him that I had suspected his mother didn't like me for a while, but I had never brought it up, dismissing it as a silly theory to explain her coldness towards me. Now, however, I was starting to believe there might be some truth to it. I recounted how her behavior towards me changed when he moved out to live with me, and she began acting cold towards me afterward. Her comment about me not visiting often enough only added to the suspicion. When I shared these observations with him, he acknowledged that it could be true. He knew how much family meant to his mother and how she had been upset when he first decided to move out to live with me. Despite not showing it at the time, he believed she might blame me for it and still hold it against me. While understanding her behavior, it still didn't excuse her cruelty towards me, especially right before our vacation. Feeling terrible that day, my husband and I discussed how canceling the vacation and confronting her wouldn't be sufficient. I wanted her to understand the pain she caused me, so we devised a plan. We would go along with their travel arrangements, meeting them at the airport as planned. However, instead of joining them, we would secretly board a flight to another destination, leaving them behind. By the time they realized what happened, we would already be elsewhere. It seemed like a foolproof plan, and we executed it without hesitation. The following day, we met his family at the airport as planned. After a brief excuse to take photos, we slipped away unnoticed and purchased tickets for a flight to San Francisco, a destination of our choosing. It's been enjoyable being here, just my husband and me, free from anyone who doesn't appreciate me. Although his family eventually realized something was amiss and attempted to contact us multiple times, it was too late. They even tried to reach out to us through text messages, but we chose to ignore them all. Fortunately, airports are vast places and they couldn't locate us in time to intervene or confront us. We reached our destination smoothly, without much commotion. After landing, we decided to come clean with them. My husband informed the family via text about what had transpired with Sandra the day before. He explained that since I wasn't considered family, we felt it best to distance ourselves from the vacation out of respect for her. We anticipated Sandra's anger, maybe even from my father-in-law, but we didn't expect the entire family to turn against us. Everyone seemed furious because we left them stranded at the airport, causing them unnecessary worry. Despite them still taking their flight, they were upset with our sudden disappearance, considering it irresponsible and selfish. They directed much of their anger towards me, arguing that Sandra's words didn't justify our extreme actions. They believed I shouldn't have assumed they would cover my expenses for the trip, and that it was my mistake not to offer to pay for myself. They criticized me for not making enough effort to integrate into their family. They pointed out that I rarely attended their weekly family dinners or engaged in regular online chats like they did. It seemed as though I had little time for them. While they understood my busy schedule, they couldn't accept being treated like banks, hence Sandra's decision not to fund my vacation. This suggestion that I was self-centered and dependent on them for financial support was deeply insulting considering I earned my own money. I defended myself, arguing that their expectations were unrealistic. They claimed they had weekly dinners, but it was practically every other day. It was unfair to expect my husband and me to commute regularly for dinner, especially when we valued personal space. Despite this, we made efforts to visit them every 1 or 2 weeks, a routine we maintained even before marriage. It felt like they deliberately overlooked this to paint me in a negative light. I reminded them of my efforts to integrate into their family and asserted that if this wasn't sufficient, there wasn't much more my husband and I could do. Their response was anger, accusing us of immaturity and ruining their vacation with our selfishness. They criticized my decision to travel separately with my husband, insinuating that I isolated him from his family. I felt compelled to clarify this, as it wasn't solely my decision. My husband shared my sentiment about the excessive frequency of family gatherings. We both agreed that meeting every other day for meals seemed unnecessary, akin to living together. If we wanted to maintain some distance from his family, daily visits didn't align with that goal. This decision wasn't solely mine. My husband was equally involved in it. Despite their dissatisfaction, it was what we both wanted, so it's unfair for his family to solely blame me for it. Regarding their accusations about expecting them to cover my vacation expenses without making an effort to integrate into the family, I don't believe it's accurate. I never assumed they would pay for me. If they had clarified their expectations from the start, I would have either agreed or opted out. Sandra's last-minute revelation felt calculated and intended to make me feel inadequate. I would have gladly covered my expenses, as I mentioned earlier. Their claim that I didn't try to become part of the family because I didn't visit their house frequently is absurd. I made sincere efforts to win their approval, believing Sandra was the only one who disapproved of me. It's disheartening to learn that none of them like me as much as I thought. Update: my husband and I are still enjoying our vacation, but his family's behavior remains a disappointment. I've come to realize that their anger towards me for not wanting to practically move in with them is unreasonable. I shouldn't have to sacrifice my personal space and privacy just to appease them. If they want to be upset, that's their choice, but I wish they wouldn't feel the need to constantly express it, as we're already aware and unaffected by their displeasure. Just yesterday, they resorted to texting me because reaching out to my husband didn't work. They warned me that my attempts to disrupt their family would fail because their bonds were too strong. I found their dramatic reaction unnecessary, considering I hadn't done anything to cause discord. It was their insults that led my husband and me to distance ourselves from them once again. They failed to acknowledge that my husband has his own free will. Our decision to take a separate vacation was mutual based on his desires. I reminded them of this in my response, emphasizing that it was unfair to solely blame me. If they had treated me decently, perhaps my husband wouldn't have wanted to distance himself from them. Sandra spearheaded the texting, but I knew the entire family shared the sentiment that I was controlling my husband. Refusing to engage further, I decided to block them all and focus on enjoying my vacation, which I had taken time off for. When I informed my husband about the texts, he advised me to ignore them, recognizing the futility in trying to explain anything to them. They were too absorbed in their own world to consider that perhaps we simply wanted to lead a normal life, which wouldn't be possible if we were living with them or even in close proximity. They tend to be overly dramatic. Update: we returned from our vacation last night, which was enjoyable. However, now that it's over, it's back to work. We had hoped for a peaceful week back, but that seems unlikely as his family also returned today. During our vacation, we had no contact with them as we had blocked them on all social media platforms and their numbers. It was peaceful being away from the drama, but now that we're back and so are they wasted no time in reaching out to us to stir up more drama. After a long day at work, we heard someone vigorously ringing our doorbell, and we knew it had to be someone from my husband's family even before opening the door. As expected, it was Sandra standing outside. We politely informed her that we were exhausted from work and not interested in speaking with her at the moment. However, she disregarded our wishes and pushed her way into the living room. Feeling irritated, I firmly requested her to leave, expressing that her previous behavior before the vacation was unacceptable, and I had no desire to engage with her. I anticipated she would find a way to blame me for everything, but instead she told me to be silent, claiming she was there to speak with her son, not me. I objected to her tone, asserting that she couldn't speak to me that way, especially under my roof. This seemed to infuriate her, as she erupted into a tirade, accusing me of various things, like attempting to isolate her son and undermine her authority in front of him. She claimed she had always anticipated this day, branding me a home wrecker who couldn't bear to see my husband close to his family. Fearing it would diminish my control over him, she even labeled me a psycho and declared she was there to rescue her son from my influence. In response, I expressed relief at not being part of her family, as it seemed more like a cult than a normal family. This triggered an extreme reaction from her, and before I knew it, she had lunged at me, grabbing me by the hair and physically assaulting me. My husband swiftly intervened, separating us and escorting his mother out of the house. Despite being ejected, she continued to scream derogatory insults at me from the front yard. Shaken by the incident, I took a moment to compose myself before my husband, and I decided to call the authorities to have her removed from our property. Even after my husband had physically removed her from the house, she remained outside loudly protesting my alleged role in breaking up her family. It wasn't until the police finally arrived that she ceased her yelling, transitioning to pleading with us not to press charges. However, it was too late. Both my husband and I had firmly decided not to let this slide. Her physical attack couldn't be overlooked, as it might embolden her to repeat such behavior. Consequently, we pursued charges against her. Although my injuries weren't severe, it's likely she'll face minimal consequences. Nevertheless, having it on record was important. Seeing her taken away sobbing uncontrollably was surreal, considering her recent aggressive demeanor. Following this ordeal, my husband and I agreed to seek legal counsel to obtain a restraining order. It was evident that she posed a threat, and we couldn't take any chances. Additionally, we began seriously considering relocating, a notion we had entertained previously due to the inconvenience of our current location in relation to our workplaces. We're determined to ensure she can't reach us again, and that includes taking precautions against his family as well. Several hours have passed since her arrest, and there's been no attempt from his family to reach out to us. Undoubtedly, they'll be upset, and there's even the possibility of them disowning him over this decision. Despite the potential consequences, we believe standing up against her aggression is worth it. Sandra needed to be taken down a peg, and I stand by calling her out for her cult-like behavior and ensuring she faced consequences for attacking me. Update 3. We obtained the restraining order against Sandra, and it's been a hectic couple of days since. Amidst searching for a new home, dealing with the fallout, and attending court appearances, I didn't have time to provide an update until now. Sandra received a lenient punishment, community service, since my injuries weren't severe. However, my husband's family chose to twist the narrative, portraying Sandra as the victim. They spread rumors alleging I provoked her attack, conveniently ignoring the truth that we were forced to call the police to protect ourselves. Despite their efforts, most people see through their lies and support us. Consequently, my husband's family is facing consequences, as many are cutting ties with them. My comments about Sandra's controlling behavior were vindicated, and while I gladly confront her again. The restraining order and our recent move make that unlikely. We've severed ties on social media and relocated, ensuring they can't intrude on our lives. My husband is especially relieved, having found his family's behavior suffocating. I'm grateful for the supportive environment my own family, including my husband, provides.